Tyla. Tyla. She has a Mars sextile Neptune in her chart. We're going to talk about Mars and Pisces today. I did a video on her. I'll put it down in the description. Welcome to Joe's Astrology. And today in this episode, I'm going to be talking about Mars and Pisces. Mars has been in Pisces for a few weeks now. It's past the conjunction with Mars-Saturn. And before I get started, I just want to mention that down below in the description, as always, I will also have some of the other alignments that are going on today, like Moon and Gemini. I'll have that video down below in the description. Also have Mars-Saturn video down there, and maybe a few others. I want to read from a book that I have. It's called the Pluto. It's a book by Jeffrey Wolf Green. It's the Pluto 2 book, and I'm going to put that up on the screen as well and go through what his description of is Mars in Pisces. I have the book and the title of this chapter here, Mars in Pisces. And I'm just going to go through some of the highlighted things I have here and talk a little bit about my experiences with Mars in Pisces. So he says here, Mars in Pisces will correlate to a soul that desires to penetrate and energize all of the desires that have been held in the unconscious state over many lifetimes. The soul must now act on all the remaining desires that have been held at an unconscious level and thus not acted on. Now, I don't really think that this is 100% for everyone, because if it is a very scary notion from my perspective. Because if you have people, let's say you have a person who has Mars in Pisces, and they may be a married person or someone who is in a career, and it's very stable and it has certain rules, and it limits the access to certain desires. I mean, that is a very scary notion from my perspective, because this person is just not really, I want to say like a ticking time bomb, in the sense that at any given point they could just bail, and the people that are involved have no idea what's coming, particularly in a personal relationship. So if you have Mars in Pisces, I think not to impose fear on people, but the key here is to bring those, which we're going to get into, is to bring those desires to the surface. And I think if you are in those situations and you're openly speaking about those desires, you're aware of them, you have some awareness over them, in the sense that it's not imminent. They don't have to happen right now. I don't think that is as much of a problem as if you aren't aware of these things. So it says Mars in Pisces will energize the pineal gland within the brain. And this is the case with, it can be the case with other Pisces alignments as well. But he's here saying Mars in Pisces will energize, Mars being the energizer. It's really, he's saying pineal gland associated with Neptune, Mars in Pisces. Mars is energizing the pineal gland. So this person can have a very good imagination and be good with fantasy. And it says here that the nature of these images are ever changing and shifting. As a result, the Mars in Pisces soul creates an energy system in which there is a desire to act on these images. So again, we get the idea of Mars acting on the images. And I have Mars in a sextile, almost exact sextile with Neptune. I know many people that have Mars-Neptune conjunctions. You can see in some of my other videos with famous people that have Mars-Neptune aspects. And for me, I have definitely been someone who has acted on their fantasies and their images, particularly when it comes to things like this, like a YouTube channel. I've done some things that are very out of the ordinary for someone in my position, out of the ordinary from the perception of other people. And that if I look back and reflect, that is essentially what I'm doing. I'm acting on these fantasies or these imaginations that I have. and this can play out as well. And anyway, another person I know that has Mars and Mars conjunct Neptune has primarily worked for the government most of his life, and that has propelled him into some of his other fantasies. I know he's talked a lot. He's from New York, or he lived in New York, and he has talked about moving to Florida for the longest time. And if I told you the story and how that came to be, it's very interesting. And if you look at that story, you can see that he has created this fantasy, this in his imagination, and it has came true. He has made it, or has worked towards it coming true, and it was in kind of a roundabout way. On the other hand, many of these imagined realities will not manifest into concrete reality, no matter how strong the belief. So this can be a more negative expression of the Mars Neptune. That, depending on what those fantasies are, I talk a lot about this in my other videos. If it's not possible, or if it's not in your sphere of influence, it's not going to come true. And he's saying here that the soul, or the person, or the soul is teaching itself something. First, to simply imagine this, or that it is acting it out anyway. Desire reflecting that which is imagined has culminated. Secondly, the egocentric will is not enough to make something happen, but there is a need to align personal will with higher will. And thirdly, to also understand the nature of its desires that are reflected in the soul's need to escape from normal reality. So he's talking about escapism there, learning about escapism. So many people who don't have these things, as I said, come into reality. They're not possible. They're not aware of this. They're really in a state of escapism, so that Mars is energizing the need to escape from normal reality. The second one is interesting too, the need to align personal will with higher will. If you're familiar with Aleister Crowley, he has a saying, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And what he means by that is that when your personal will is aligned with higher will, with God's will, and you can see this in the astrology, the typically the person's desires will come true. But when the personal will is not aligned with the higher will, the things will not come true, and you can be blocked, or you may learn some difficult lessons. And what he's saying is, do it thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That if you are aligned with higher will, if you're aligned with God's will, then you can pretty much, he's saying, you can do whatever you want as long as you're aligned with God's will for yourself. And firstly, to imagine this, or that it is acting it out anyway, the desire of connection. Not sure what he really means by the first one. I'm going to skip that. Talking about victimization here. This can lead to being a victim. And these are just common Pisces, Neptune keywords. But he's relating it to anger. Mars in Pisces generates an anger based in victimization. You could feel victimized by your situation and become angry. And these things can be going throughout the life for Mars in Pisces. I've experienced most of these. And he's going to talk about, as life evolves, the Mars in Pisces soul must embrace its opposite, Virgo. In essence, this means to create a consciousness that is able to intellectually discriminate and understand the connection between the desires that emanate from within themselves and the circumstantial realities of these desires. So this can lead to someone who it could go into therapy, which can be very good for them, because they can begin to, therapy being Virgo, they can begin to discriminate and going through their thoughts, and this is what many people with Pisces will not want to do, especially Mars in Pisces. they will then learn to take responsibility for their own actions and stop blaming everyone else for the very conditions that they have created for themselves. So essentially, through therapy, they're going to go through all of the things that I spoke about and really come to terms with the real reality and uh, not the imagination or what they think is happening. So everything that I discussed, they're going to come to terms with. They're just going to bring this to the surface and see that this is what's happening. And have that, as I said in the beginning of this video, have the awareness. Bring that Mars and Pisces and make it aware. A lot of the problems that it can create, that can prevent them. And that's the idea of therapy. You can do this on your own. You don't need to go to therapy. But definitely want to avoid this idea of blaming everyone else for the conditions that they have created for themselves. And any way you want to look at it, because this can be very deep, that's what you have to do. And that is about it for that. Mars in Pisces. I think I will leave it there for now. Check out, I do have a video with, we can talk about Andrew Tate. I have his astrology. He has a Mars in Pisces, but Jupiter's also there. And that's a good example of a guy who probably did embrace the opposite Virgo. He might not show it in his videos, but to come to that point to where he is now, you can see that he kind of lives a dream life. He is very, just having a lot of those videos and being on YouTube is part of the cathartic process for sure. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now, and I hope this finds you well, and have a great day.